Good morning. Nice to be here. Nice to be alive. Important to be appreciative and humble. To be open to the changes that are inevitably going to occur today. Even while we're having our conversation, our bodies, our environments, our world, our solar system, everything is changing constantly, consistently, in each and every moment of time. We need something to base our personalities and ourselves, whom we feel we are, on. We need something as a foundation. What can we find? We can find ourselves. We can find our physiological being, and that's exactly what we're doing in mindful meditation when we begin. It is only a beginning to do this, to find this state of calm. It is not the end, but the beginning of one's exploration, one's curiosity, evolving in one sense of time. There is a world which we follow. It is our own, the planet Earth. It is our foundation of life. It is where it, for us, has all begun. We are just one world of, I suspect, trillions of worlds that surround trillions of suns, many of which have found themselves in such a position relative to their sun that the opportunity for life abounds. And so, life has developed. It is not just me saying these words and, let's say, hopeful that you agree. It is common sense. It is evolution talking through my lips. It is not my words so much as it is history. Allow the words to separate from my involvement, considering these things on one's own. What does your own common sense dictate for your beliefs, for what you know? It is here. One must live their own unique lives. What you believe, what you have been taught and experienced. But the older that one gets, if one is remaining actively curious, you begin to realize our societies are rife with half-truths. It's the way it is. We speak about the positive and we ignore the negative. Or we speak about the negative and ignore the positive. It is the way oftentimes things are done. In communication, there are many holes left in a conversation. The truth is half told. It is the same kind of a concept as describing a conversation someone has with two different people. Both have their own variation of the explanation. Which one is the truth? It can be that both are the truth to the individual who is speaking or specifying their feelings. And so you have two different, unique conversations of what the truth is. Which is wrong, which is right. It's not that either need be right or wrong. It is they are different. Where is the compromise between the two. The truth is somewhere out there, but in many ways unknown, because it is ever changing. It is only one way for one moment of time, and then it is different again and again. The wider then one's perception becomes, the longer the moments tend to have a cohesiveness. And instead of life flowing in a moment-by-moment process, one gets bigger bites of data, a greater possibility or potential of a greater depth of understanding. Rather than getting a snippet, one gets a conversation. Rather than getting a word, one gets a paragraph or two. This is the goal of mindful meditation. It is not to be relaxing, to be calm. It is wonderful to be this way. And it is helpful in one's activities to assume this mantle of meditations. But it is only the beginning. Oftentimes, one goes to a class or a lecture, or reads a book or a pamphlet, or listens to a podcast, or has a conversation. And what are they speaking about? A means to what? A means to being calm, of being focused, of having a sense of clarity, cohesiveness. This is a great beginning, no question. But it is 5 or 10% of what the opportunity presented to oneself becomes. Because the window, the door, unto one's own greater being and the universe begins to open when you are in this 5 or 10% way. Do not be satisfied by a state of relaxation. Be appreciative. Be in harmony and in a state of grace. Yes, for sure. And then open your eyes, your heart, your soul to grow and allow oneself to perceive more. This is why we call this mindful meditation. There is a difference. Being here now, in these moments together, we can easily find ourselves in a posture like what we have been alluding to, where we are comfortable, where we have a habit of coming into a certain position, most likely sitting, but be laying down, even standing or walking around. Get that, got that. And from there, taking it another step to beginning to assimilate a series of steps which help us to focus our minds, to linger on a number of steps we can take to produce consequences which we are looking to do. We can breathe with a greater sense of purpose. We can follow techniques which have been written about and talked about for centuries, millenniums. We can do all these things. And as a beginner, it is more often one should be doing this. And then we find ourselves more physiologically oriented, our breathing. extremely important. And our pulsing comes next. So we're breathing and we're pulsing in awareness, in a state of depth, not shallowly, but deeply aware of what we're doing. This is a preliminary goal, not the goal, a preliminary goal. It is your mind we are after, not the act of breathing or the act of your heart muscle squeezing. These are processes. That's all. We want more. We tie these simple processes, although evolutionary considerations aside, because these took millions of years of development, if not billions. Not to downplay their importance, but to celebrate that there is more. The heat that's emanating from one's muscular activity doing these two processes, one's movement of one's lungs and diaphragm, of one's heart's muscles squeezing, disseminated through our bodies in our vascular systems. Okay, simple enough. Becoming even more aware while we're doing this of the faint and yet ever-present vibration of our whole cellular being, because it is vibrating with life. Just feel is all one need do. Beneath one's pulse, it is the quivering, ecstatic shimmer of being alive. These four different aspects of one's own physiology is enough to set a preliminary or takeoff stage in one's life's journey. Your journey and mine. Practicing. One need do this as much as one can or allows themselves in your quotient of time. It is, from my own experience, something one need do every day. Oftentimes, every day. Quite frankly, it is even more than what one should do every day, but what one should attempt to do all the time. Be here, now, in this our eternal moment, is best. All possibilities are open, and with practice one accumulates an ability to be this way more and more. It does not just necessarily happen on its own. It is like re-educating oneself, because in preschool, in kindergarten, in elementary and high schools, in community colleges and universities, they're not talking about these things. Not so often. Maybe in very small bits and drabs. It is usually the ethos of our society, of our civilization, of our cultures and our spiritual traditions, center stage, all part of the organization, all acting in concert to produce all the different aspects, the scenery, the landscape of the stage of life. Is it real? You must decide for yourself what's real. But when one widens one's perspective more and more, one begins to see with a greater sense of clarity of what is and what is not. It is by this knowledge we have an opportunity. At this juncture, in the very beginning throes of the Aquarian age, the age of reasoning of recognition, wherein we are the beginning of mankind's greatest evolution. Take heed, join in, spread the word, celebrate, be mindful, be careful, ponder these things. The music continues for another minute, please. Namaste.